Morning, the whole city would think Adrian Blackwell had stolen me, and the worst part was that half of them would believe it because it sounded easier than the truth. A runaway bride was embarrassing. A frightened woman was inconvenient. But a mafia boss stealing someone else's fiancé was a story people could understand. It had villains, headlines, and just enough darkness to keep them from asking why the bride had run in the first place. I stood in Adrian's library with my father's envelope open on the desk, the brass key glinting beside a cold cup of tea, and felt the walls of my old life folding in around me. "Show me," I said. Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly. "You do not need to watch it." "Yes, I do." He studied me for a long moment, then turned the phone around. The news clip was short and cruel. A shaky video from outside the chapel showed me running down the steps in my wedding dress, rain already starting to fall, my face pale and panicked beneath the veil. The caption beneath it read, "Prominent Chicago bride missing after disturbance at wedding." Then Nathan appeared, standing under the church awning with his tuxedo soaked at the shoulders, looking devastated in a way that would have fooled me if I had not heard him laughing before it all began. "Emily has been under tremendous stress," he told the reporter. "We are only concerned for her safety. We believe she may be with someone dangerous." Someone dangerous. The camera cut to an old photograph of Adrian stepping out of a black car at a charity event, his expression unreadable, his name crawling across the bottom of the screen like a warning label. My stomach dropped. Nathan had not just blamed me. He had tied me to Adrian on purpose. He was making sure no normal door would open for me by sunrise. "Turn it off," I whispered. Adrian did. The silence afterward felt heavier than the video. I pressed both hands against the desk and tried to breathe through the shame, the anger, the sick understanding that Nathan knew exactly how the world treated women who looked frightened on camera. He is making me look unstable, so anything I say sounds like damage control. Yes. And he is making you look guilty, so you cannot defend me without proving his point. Adrian's face remained still, but his eyes sharpened with approval I did not want to need. "Yes." I looked at the envelope again. "Then we speak first." One of the men by the door shifted. Adrian did not. "Emily." "No," I straightened, though my knees still felt weak. "He already took my wedding. He does not get to take my voice too." Something passed across Adrian's face then, quiet and unexpected. Respect, maybe. Or memory. He walked to the sideboard, poured a glass of water, and set it near my hand. "If you make a statement now, every reporter in Illinois will dig into your life by breakfast. They already are. They will call you emotional. They will call you confused. They will ask why you went with me. Then I will tell them the truth. The truth is not always enough." His voice was not cruel. That made it harder. "No," I said. "But silence is what men like Nathan count on." The room went still around that sentence. Even the fire seemed to quiet down. Adrian looked at me the way he had on the street, like I was not what he expected to find in his path. "What do you want to say?" he asked. I looked down at my hands. The pale circle where the ring had been was still there. Proof that leaving did not erase everything immediately. Not everything. Not my father. Not the safe. Not yet. I swallowed. Just enough. Adrian nodded once to the man by the door. "Bring the camera crew in-house. No outside feed. No edits without her approval." The man left. I stared at Adrian. "You have a camera crew?" "I have many things people find inconvenient." I almost smiled. Almost. Mrs. Vale returned with the clothes she had left for me earlier, now warmed and folded over her arm. "You should not face cameras in a robe, dear." Her voice was practical, but her eyes were gentle. 20 minutes later, I stood in a small sitting room wearing borrowed gray slacks and a navy sweater, my damp hair brushed back, my face bare except for the truth exhaustion had written there. A single camera lens looked at me from across the room. Adrian stood behind it, not beside me, not touching me, not trying to become part of my story. That mattered more than I wanted it to. The red light blinked on. My mouth went dry. Then I remembered my father's note. "Trust the man only if he gives you the choice to walk away." I lifted my chin. "My name is Emily Carter," I said, my voice shaking but mine. "Tonight, I left my wedding by choice. I am safe. I have not been harmed. I have not been taken. And I am not returning to Nathan Reed. Outside the windows, thunder rolled across the lake. The red light kept burning. So did I. The statement went out at 2:17 in the morning. Not to every news station. Not to every gossip page. Just to one local reporter with a reputation for checking facts before selling fear, and to my aunt, because I still had enough hope left to believe family might choose truth when they heard it from my own mouth. For 12 minutes after the red light on the camera went dark, nobody spoke. I sat on the edge of a leather chair with my hands folded so tightly my knuckles looked white, listening to rain slide down the windows of Adrian's house. My voice still echoed in my head. I am not returning to Nathan Reed. I had said it. I had said it out loud, into a camera, in a borrowed sweater, with no ring on my finger and no idea what the morning would cost me. Adrian stood near the fireplace, reading updates on his phone without changing expression. Mrs. Vale placed another cup of tea beside me, then vanished with the quiet efficiency of a woman who knew when comfort should not be noisy. Is it working? I asked. Adrian looked up. Define working. Is anyone believing me? He hesitated for half a second. That was answer enough. My stomach sank. They think I am lying. Some do. I swallowed. And the others? The others are asking why Nathan spoke for you before you spoke for yourself. I looked down at my hands. That should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the first breath after being underwater too long, painful because my lungs had almost forgotten how to expand. Adrian crossed the room and set his phone on the table where I could see it, but he did not crowd me. The screen showed headlines multiplying like sparks. Bride denies abduction. Carter heiress says she left wedding willingly. Reed family requests privacy. Then another one appeared, sharper than the rest. Questions surround late William Carter's estate. My father's name. My breath caught. Adrian saw it and picked up the phone before I had to ask him to. Nathan is pushing back, he said. He wants reporters digging around your father before you can control what they find. Can he find the safe? Not without you. You said I do not know where it is. Your father believed you could figure it out. I laughed softly, but there was nothing happy in it. My father used to hide birthday gifts in the laundry room because he thought I would never look somewhere boring. Adrian's expression shifted. Would you? I blinked. What? Look somewhere boring. The question sat between us, strangely heavy. I thought of Dad's games when I was little, the scavenger hunts he made every April for my birthday. Never obvious. Never dramatic. He would leave the first clue somewhere ordinary, taped under a cereal box, tucked inside a library card sleeve, folded into the glove compartment of his old Ford. The answer was always hidden where memory made you stop looking. My throat tightened. He would not use a bank. Adrian watched me carefully. Why not? Because that is where men like Nathan would look. I stood slowly. The room seemed clearer now, every object sharpened by the sudden pull of purpose. He would put it somewhere that looked worthless. Adrian reached for his jacket. Where? I closed my eyes and saw my father's classroom. Chalk dust. Old maps. The wooden desk with one drawer that stuck. The emergency radio he kept on the shelf even after the school upgraded everything. The framed photograph of me at 10 years old, missing both front teeth and holding a blue ribbon from the science fair. Then I saw the bookcase in our old house, the one my aunt had packed after the funeral. Boxes labeled donate, keep, trash. My father's leather-bound copy of the Odyssey, the one he said every lost person should read twice. My storage unit, I whispered. In Evanston. My aunt put half his things there after he died. Adrian's phone lit up again before he could answer. This time, he did not show me the screen immediately. His jaw tightened. What? I asked. He looked at me, and the calm in his face became something colder. Your aunt just called Nathan's family attorney. She is giving him access to the storage unit at 9 in the morning. The clock on the mantel read 2:41. 6 hours and 19 minutes. My fear came back, but this time it did not make me freeze. It stood behind me like a storm I had learned how to walk through. Then we get there first, I said. Adrian studied me for one long second, then gave a single nod. Get your shoes, Emily. Mrs. Vale gave me shoes that belonged to her niece, plain black flats half a size too big, and a wool coat that smelled faintly of lavender and cedar. They were not armor. They were borrowed, soft, ordinary things. But when I put them on, I felt more ready than I ever had in the wedding dress waiting upstairs like a beautiful lie. Adrian did not rush me. He stood in the hallway with his coat over one arm and his phone in the other, speaking quietly to men who listened as if each word had weight. No shouting. No chaos. Just motion, controlled and silent. By 3:03 in the morning, we were in the back of a black SUV, heading south through streets washed silver by rain. Chicago looked different from behind tinted glass. The same city where I had cried over parking tickets and bought cheap coffee before work now slid past like a place with hidden rooms under every sidewalk. Adrian sat beside me, not close enough to touch, not far enough to feel absent. His men were in the front seats. Another vehicle followed behind us at a steady distance. I watched the wipers drag water across the windshield and tried not to think about my aunt handing Nathan's attorney the keys to my father's last secrets. Why would she do that? I asked, mostly to the window. My aunt never liked Nathan, but she loved my father. Adrian looked at me from the corner of his eye. Grief makes some people protective. It makes others practical. Practical means betraying me. Practical means choosing the person who looks safest to stand beside in public. I hated how true that sounded. My aunt had spent her whole life smoothing tablecloths over broken furniture. Appearances mattered to her because appearances had been the only thing she could control. Nathan, with his family name and soft voice and clean smile, looked safer than me in borrowed shoes sitting beside Adrian Blackwell at 3 in the morning. We reached Evanston just before 3:40. The storage facility sat behind a chain-link fence near a row of closed auto shops, its sign buzzing weakly in the rain. Westlake Climate Storage. I remembered signing the papers after Dad's funeral with hands so numb I could barely hold the pen. Unit C12. Second row. Blue door. Adrian's men spoke briefly to the night manager, a sleepy college student in a Northwestern hoodie who looked at Adrian once and decided paperwork could wait until later. The gate rolled open. The SUV moved inside. My pulse climbed with every turn. When we stopped in front of seat 12, I could not move. The blue door looked exactly the same as it had 6 years ago. Scratched paint. Rust near the handle. A tiny white sticker with the number peeling at one corner. Nothing about it suggested danger. Nothing about it said my father had hidden a truth inside. Adrian stepped out first, then turned back toward me. You do not have to do this alone. I looked at his hand, not offered, just waiting near the open door in case I needed balance. I did not take it. But I stepped out because he had made it a choice. The air smelled like wet pavement and old cardboard. My fingers shook as I unlocked the padlock with the key from my purse, the everyday key I had not thought about in months. The door rattled upward with a sound that scraped straight through me. Dusty boxes filled the unit from concrete floor to metal ceiling. Carter Christmas. Kitchen. Books. Dad's school. My childhood stacked in brown cardboard and black marker. I went straight to the boxes labeled books. There were 7 of them. Of course there were 7. Dad never owned one book when he could own 3 copies with different notes in the margins. Adrian stayed at the entrance, letting me dig through the past without hovering over it. I opened the first box. Paperbacks. Old lesson plans. A cracked globe wrapped in newspaper. The second box held yearbooks and framed certificates. The third smelled like basement dust and vanilla, the way Dad's office always had. My hands closed around a familiar dark blue cover. The Odyssey. The spine was worn soft. My name was written inside the front cover in Dad's careful print. For my Emily, who will always find her way home. My vision blurred. I turned the pages with trembling fingers until something slipped out and landed at my feet. Not a key. Not a document. A Polaroid. Dad standing in front of a laundromat I did not recognize, pointing at the sign like it was a joke only he understood. On the white border, he had written one sentence. Even heroes need clean hands. The Polaroid felt weightless in my hand, but the words on the border pulled every memory in the storage unit toward one place. Even heroes need clean hands. I read it once. Twice. Then I looked at the laundromat sign behind my father's smiling face. Beacon Wash and Fold. The paint was faded green. A neon shirt hung crooked in the window. I did not recognize the street, but Adrian did. I saw it in the way his eyes narrowed. "You know it," I said. He took the Polaroid only when I held it out to him, careful not to let his fingers brush mine unless I chose it. South Side. Bridgeport. It closed years ago. Why would my father take a picture there? Adrian turned the photo toward the weak overhead light. Because it was never just a laundromat. My stomach tightened. Of course it was not. A faint sound touched his mouth, not quite a laugh. It disappeared quickly. Places like that move money, messages, favors. Things people want cleaned before they enter polite society. I looked at the sentence again. Even heroes need clean hands. My father had loved clues, but he had also loved moral lessons. He would hide the truth inside a pun and dare me to be smart enough or stubborn enough to follow it. Then the safe is there. Maybe. Adrian looked toward the open lane between storage units, where rain shimmered under security lights. Or the next clue is. I closed the book, holding the Odyssey against my chest. We have less than 5 hours before Nathan's attorney gets here. Then we do not waste one. One of Adrian's men appeared at the unit door, his phone pressed low against his chest. "Mr. Blackwell, we have movement outside the gate." The air changed so quickly I felt it on my skin. Adrian stepped slightly in front of me, not touching, not dramatic, just enough that my body understood the oldest language in the world. "Shield." "How many?" he asked. "2 vehicles. No plates visible. They are waiting across the street." My hands tightened around the book. "Nathan." Adrian did not look away from the man. Not his usual people. That answer was worse. I had spent one night learning that there were layers beneath the city, and every time I thought I had reached the floor, another trapdoor opened. "We leave through the service exit," Adrian said. "No headlights until we clear the alley." The men moved at once. Boxes were closed. The storage door came down with a metallic rattle that sounded far too loud in the sleeping facility. I kept the Polaroid and the book inside my coat, pressed against my ribs like they could keep my heart in place. We walked between rows of blue doors, our footsteps softened by wet concrete. The facility lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn cried low and lonely through the dark. I could feel Adrian beside me without looking. He moved like someone who had spent his entire life listening for danger before it spoke. At the back of the property, a narrow service gate opened into an alley lined with dumpsters and rain-slick brick. The second SUV waited there, engine running, dark and quiet. I was almost to the door when my phone rang. Not the new phone Adrian had given me. My old phone. The one I had left behind at the chapel. The sound came from inside the book pressed to my chest. I froze. Adrian turned slowly. "Emily." With shaking hands, I opened the Odyssey again. The center of the pages had been carved out so neatly I had not noticed in the dim storage unit. Inside the hollow space lay a small black phone, old but charged, its screen glowing with one incoming call. Unknown number. The ringing seemed impossibly loud. Adrian's face went still. "Do not answer it." But I already knew. Not from logic. From blood. From the way grief sometimes recognizes a voice before it hears one. I pressed accept and lifted the phone to my ear. For 1 second, there was only static. Then a recording began, warm and familiar and impossible. "Emily, sweetheart, if you found this, then you remembered the story. Good. That means you're not as lost as they hoped." My father's voice moved through the dark alley, and every wall I had built inside myself broke at once. I covered my mouth with my hand, but I did not hang up. I could not. The recording continued, softer now. "The safe is not in Bridgeport. That is where I learned who was washing the money. The safe is where I taught you that truth survives fire." My breath caught. Adrian was watching me, reading the clue from my face before I understood it myself. Truth survives fire. My father's classroom. The old debate trophy case. The fire drill map by the east stairwell. Then the memory struck so hard I whispered it aloud. The burned library. Adrian's eyes sharpened. Lincoln Prep had a library fire 12 years ago. Dad rebuilt the archive room after it. The phone crackled again, and my father's voice returned with one final sentence. Go before morning, Em. And do not trust the bridegroom who smiles for cameras. The words stayed in the alley after the recording ended. Do not trust the bridegroom who smiles for cameras. My father had been gone for 6 years, but in that moment, he felt closer than the rain on my face. I held the hidden phone against my chest and tried not to fold under the weight of hearing him again. Adrian did not rush me. He did not tell me we had to move, even though we did. He stood between me and the mouth of the alley while his men watched the street, giving my grief 10 impossible seconds to breathe. Then headlights swept across the brick wall. The vehicles outside the gate were moving. Emily, Adrian said quietly. Not a command. A handrail. I nodded because words were too expensive. We got into the SUV, and the driver pulled out through the alley with the lights off until we reached the next block. The city passed in streaks of wet pavement and sleeping storefronts. I sat with the Odyssey in my lap, the hollowed pages open around the phone like my father had hidden his voice inside a wound. Lincoln Preparatory is closed, I said. They shut it down 2 years after Dad died. The district sold the building to a developer. Adrian looked at his phone. The developer has not started construction. There are legal delays. How do you know that? I own one of the companies delaying it. I turned to stare at him. He did not look smug. He looked tired. Why? He was silent long enough for the wipers to cross the windshield 3 times. Because your father asked me to keep the building standing if anything happened to him. The answer hit softly and somehow hurt more than a shout. My father had been planning exits inside exits. Doors inside doors. And I had been grieving him like he was only gone, not understanding he had left pieces of himself all over the city for me to find when I was ready. You should have told me, I whispered. Adrian's jaw tightened. Yes. I expected an excuse. He did not give me one. That made anger harder to hold. We reached Lincoln Preparatory at 4:28 in the morning. The school sat behind a rusted fence on a quiet street lined with bare trees and old brick 2-flats. Rainwater pooled in the cracked basketball court. The sign out front still showed faded gold letters, half covered by ivy. Seeing it again hollowed me out. My father used to wait on those steps every afternoon with 2 coffees, one for himself and 1 hot chocolate for me, pretending he had not left school early just to walk me home. Adrian's men opened the side gate with tools that made almost no sound. I should have questioned that. I should have questioned everything. Instead, I walked through the rain toward the east entrance, because my father's voice was still in my ear, telling me I was not as lost as they hoped. Inside, the school smelled like dust, old lockers, and wet plaster. Our flashlights cut through the dark in narrow beams. Trophy cases lined the hallway, their glass cloudy with age. Posters from a homecoming dance no one remembered curled at the edges. I passed room 214 and stopped. Dad's classroom. The door was locked, but the small window still showed the corner of his chalkboard. My chest tightened so hard I almost reached for the handle. Adrian saw me pause. On the way out, he said. It sounded like a promise. We followed the east stairwell down to the old library wing. The fire had happened when I was 13. Electrical, they said. No one was hurt, but half the archive room was smoke-damaged. Dad spent an entire summer helping restore files, old yearbooks, city records, student newspapers. Truth survives fire. The archive room door was warped at the bottom, the paint bubbled in places no renovation had fully hidden. I tried the brass key from the envelope. It fit. My hand shook as I turned it. Inside, the air was colder. Metal shelves stood in rows. Boxes labeled with years climbed almost to the ceiling. Adrian's flashlight moved across the walls, then stopped on a framed fire evacuation map. A red dot marked "You are here." Beneath it, someone had scratched tiny letters into the frame. W.C. My father's initials. I reached behind the map and felt a seam in the wall. A panel clicked loose. Behind it was not a safe. It was a small steel lockbox with a keypad and a taped note in my father's handwriting. I know you hate dates, Em, but you never forgot the day you beat me at chess. My breath caught. April 17th, I whispered. I was 9. I typed 0417. The box opened with a soft mechanical sigh. Inside was a flash drive, a stack of bank records, and one sealed envelope marked with Adrian's name. Before either of us could move, a voice came from the dark library behind us, smooth and familiar. "I was hoping your father made you smarter than this." Nathan stepped into the beam of my flashlight, smiling like the groom from every photograph, and my blood turned to ice. Nathan stood inside the ruined library like he belonged there, his tuxedo no longer perfect, rain darkening his shoulders, his smile polished enough to make the dust around him look ashamed. Behind him, two men waited near the broken card catalog, silent and watchful, but they did not move closer. They did not have to. The room had already gone cold. I held the open lockbox against my stomach with both hands, feeling the sharp edge of the flash drive press through the envelope. Adrian stepped slightly in front of me, and Nathan laughed softly. "Still playing Protector, Blackwell? That is almost touching." Adrian's voice did not change. "You should have stayed at the gate." "And missed the family reunion?" Nathan's eyes slid to me, warm and poisonous. "Emily, sweetheart, you have had a difficult night. Give me the box, and we can still fix this." The old version of me would have searched his face for the man I loved. She would have looked for guilt behind his eyes, for pain, for any sign that the last 3 years had meant something beyond contracts and keys. But standing in that burned archive room, with my father's handwriting in my pocket and Adrian's silence at my side, I finally understood that some people do not hide their true selves. They just wait until you are too trapped to walk away. "There is no way," I said. My voice shook, but it did not break. Nathan's smile thinned. "That is brave for someone who has no idea what she is holding." "Then explain it." "You would not understand." "Try me." Something ugly passed through his expression, gone almost as soon as it arrived. "Your father collected evidence against men who were keeping the city running long before you learned how to spell justice. He thought truth was sacred. It made him reckless." My fingers tightened around the box. "Do not talk about him. He ruined lives. He exposed them." Nathan's eyes flicked to Adrian. "And he gave the proof to a criminal." Adrian did not react, but I felt the sentence strike the room. Nathan saw it and smiled again. "Did he tell you that part, Emily? Your father trusted him with pieces of the archive. He did not choose the police. He chose Adrian Blackwell." I looked at Adrian. For 1 second, his silence hurt more than Nathan's words. Then Adrian said, "Because the first detective your father contacted sold his name within 6 hours." The room went quiet. Even Nathan stopped smiling. Adrian kept his eyes on me. "Your father needed someone corrupt men could not frighten. He needed time. I gave him that." "And what did you get?" Nathan asked lightly. Adrian finally looked at him. "A debt I have been paying ever since." The answer did something to me I did not have time to understand. Nathan stepped forward, and Adrian's men shifted in the hallway behind us. No one shouted. No one lunged. The danger stayed contained, which made it worse. "Last chance," Nathan said, his voice soft enough to sound reasonable on camera. "Give me the box, Emily. Walk out with me. Tell everyone you were confused. I will forgive this." I stared at him. Forgive. The word was so absurd, so clean, so dressed up in church flowers, that a laugh almost escaped me. Instead, I reached into the box and pulled out the sealed envelope marked with Adrian's name. Nathan's face changed. Just a flicker, but I saw it. "That is not yours," he said. Neither was I. Adrian turned slightly toward me. "Emily." Not warning. Not command. Just my name, steady in the smoke-stained dark. I broke the seal. Inside was 1 page in my father's handwriting and a small memory card taped beneath it. I read the first line aloud before fear could stop me. "Adrian, if my daughter is reading this with you, then the men who wanted silence have found her." My throat tightened, but I kept going. Give her the truth, not protection disguised as another cage. Let her decide where the evidence goes. I looked up at Adrian. His face had lost all its armor for 1 unguarded second. Nathan moved then, not toward me, but toward the exit, reaching for his phone. "Stop him," I said. Adrian did not move. He looked at me, waiting. Choice. My father's final test. My voice steadied. Call the reporter, I said. Call the state attorney. Call whoever still believes evidence more than money. We do it in my name. Adrian nodded once. Done. Nathan's smile vanished completely. Outside, far beyond the dead library walls, sirens began to rise through the rain, not close yet, but coming. For the first time all night, Nathan Reed looked afraid of a story he could not control. The sirens grew louder, threading through the rain and the dead hallways of Lincoln Preparatory like the sound of a city waking up from a lie. Nathan stood near the library doors with his phone in his hand and nowhere graceful left to put his smile. For 3 years, I had watched that smile open doors, calm rooms, convince people that cruelty could wear good manners and still be trusted. Now it flickered beneath the weak beam of Adrian's flashlight, and I saw what had always lived behind it. Fear. Not of Adrian. Not even of the sirens. Fear of being seen clearly. Adrian's men stepped aside when 2 investigators entered with a state attorney I recognized from television, a woman in a navy raincoat with tired eyes and no patience for theater. Behind her came the reporter who had aired my statement, holding her recorder like a candle in a dark church. Nobody dragged Nathan away. Nobody shouted. That would have been too easy, too cinematic, too much like the stories men tell about power. What happened was quieter and far more devastating. The state attorney read the documents. The reporter recorded my words. The memory card was placed into an evidence bag. My father's handwriting was photographed page by page beneath the burned ceiling he had trusted to outlast him. Nathan tried to speak over me once, calling me overwhelmed, calling me emotional, calling me his bride as if the word could still close around my throat. I looked at the woman in the raincoat and said, I am Emily Carter. I am not his wife. I am not confused. And I want everything my father found made public through the proper legal channels. My voice did not shake that time. Maybe because Adrian stood at the edge of the room, silent and still, refusing to take up space inside my choice. Maybe because my father had hidden truth for me in books, maps, fire, and memory. Or maybe because there comes a moment when fear gets tired of being mistaken for weakness. By sunrise, Nathan Reed was no longer giving interviews beneath church awnings. His family attorney stopped answering calls. My aunt left me 6 messages, each one smaller than the last, until the final one was only crying and my name. I did not call her back that morning. Some bridges should be crossed slowly, and some apologies should have to stand in the rain a while. Adrian drove me back to his house after the statements were signed. The storm had faded to a pale gray drizzle, and Lake Michigan looked endless beyond the windows, cold and bright under the first light. I wore Mrs. Vale's coat, carried my father's copy of the Odyssey, and felt strangely empty in the way a house feels after every window has been opened. At the front steps, I stopped. Adrian stopped too, several feet away, as if distance had become his way of honoring every choice I had left. What happens now? I asked. He looked at the sky before answering. You decide. 2 words. Simple. Terrifying. Beautiful. And you? His gray eyes returned to mine. I pay the debt correctly this time. By protecting me? By not turning protection into ownership. The morning wind moved between us, smelling of wet stone and lake water. For the first time since the chapel, I did not feel chased. I felt unfinished. There is a difference. Weeks passed before the city stopped saying my name like a scandal. Months passed before the investigations reached men who had once believed their money made them invisible. My father's evidence did not fix everything. Truth rarely arrives like thunder. Sometimes it comes as paperwork, signatures, quiet resignations, locked accounts, and women in navy raincoats who do not blink when powerful men complain. I moved into a small apartment near the lake. I bought my own bed, my own dishes, my own ridiculous yellow curtains. Adrian never asked for a key. He sent security for the first month, then asked if I still wanted them. When I said no, he listened. That was how I began to trust him. Not because he could command a room, but because he could leave one when I asked. On the first anniversary of my father's death, after everything came out, I went back to Lincoln Preparatory with flowers. The building was being restored into a public archive funded anonymously, though Adrian and I both knew there was nothing anonymous about repentance. I found him in the old library, standing beneath the repaired ceiling, looking at the shelf where my father's records would someday sit. He did not touch me when I walked in. He only said, "He would be proud of you." I smiled through tears. He would tell me to check the footnotes. Adrian almost smiled back. Outside, rain began again, soft against the new glass. I thought about a bride running through a storm, a man stepping out of a black car, and a father who had loved me well enough to leave me a way home. That night did not give me a savior. It gave me back my choice. And sometimes, the person who changes your life is not the one who holds you tighter, but the one who teaches the world to let you go.